Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, verse 43. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Banachari. Yamuna Tira Banachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Banachari. Yamuna Tira Banachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Paribrajacharya Stotara Sata Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prince Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Mathura Dham Ki Jai. Navadip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, verse 43. Tatratam buddhisam yogam labhate purvadehikam yatate cha tato bhuya samsiddho kurunandana. Tatratam buddhisam yogam labhate purvadehikam yatate cha tato bhuya samsiddho kurunandana. Tatratam buddhisam yogam labhate purvadehikam yatate cha tato bhuya samsiddho kurunandana. Tatra, thereupon, tam, that, buddhisam yogam, revival of such consciousness. Labhate, regains. Paurva, previous. Dehikam, bodily consciousness. Yatate, endeavors. Cha, also. Tatha, therefore. Bhuyaha, again. Samsiddho, for perfection. Kurunandana, O son of Kuru. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. On taking such a birth, he again revives the divine consciousness of his previous life, and he tries to make further progress in order to achieve complete success, O son of Kuru. Purport. King Bharata, who took his third birth in a family of a good Brahmana, is an example of good birth for the revival of previous transcendental consciousness. King Bharata was the emperor of the world, and since his time, this planet is known among the demigods as Bharatvarsha. Formerly, it was known as Ilavrita Varsha. The emperor, at an early age, retired for spiritual perfection, but failed to achieve success. In his next life, he took birth in a family of a good Brahmana and was known as Jadbharata, because he always remained secluded and did not talk to anyone. And later on, he was discovered as the greatest transcendentalist by King Rahugana. From his life, it is understood that transcendental endeavors or the practice of yoga never goes in vain. But the grace of the Lord, the transcendentalist gets repeated opportunities for complete perfection in Krishna consciousness. Tatra tam buddhi samyogam labate porvadehikam yatate chatato bhuya samsiddho kurunandana. So this continues the narration of Krishna. From the previous verses, we understand that one who practices transcendental meditation, one who actually practices transcendental life, who understands is not the body and endeavors to serve the owner of the body, the Supreme Lord, whatever advancement he makes is never lost. Neha bikrama nashasti, it's never lost. Pratyavayu na vidyate. Also, it is never diminished. And in his next life, he is given an opportunity to continue. And that opportunity usually takes place by taking birth in a house of a Brahmana. And this example is given by Prabhupada of King Bharata. In the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the story of King Bharata is narrated. It is very important that we read the Srimad Bhagavatam because it gives us so much knowledge about things which we have no understanding. Our present history, our present culture goes back 5,000-6,000 years. Before that, no historian, no professor, no university can tell what had happened before. But according to the Vedas, according to the Bhagavatam, the history of humanity goes back millions of years. In fact, because the soul is eternal, the history of the soul is also eternal. So in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, that is a very nice story of this particular kalpa in which we live. A kalpa is one day of Lord Brahma. So one day of Lord Brahma is 4 yugas, totaling 4,300,000 years, multiplied by 1,000. That is one day of Brahma, and that is called a kalpa. So in every day of Brahma, there are 14 manus, or 14 great personalities are given the post of Manu. This Manu takes charge of the human civilization. So the first Manu in this particular kalpa was Swayambhuva Manu. The Swayambhuva Manu married Satarupa, and they had a son called Priyavrata. Priyavrata had many sons, and his first son was called Agnidra. Agnidra became the emperor of the world, and he had a strong desire to have a qualified son, so he performed austerities and meditation on Lord Vishnu. This is the process. It is not forbidden to have desires. In fact, without desire, there is no life. But whatever desire you have, better you ask Krishna. Akama sarva kamova. Whether you are free from any want or you are full of desires, moksha kama. Whether you want to be liberated, udaradi. Use your intelligence. Tivrena bhakti yogena yajate purusham param. Simply worship through the process of bhakti the purusham param, the supreme person, Krishna. Because ultimately, whatever desire you have, the fulfillment of the desire has to be sanctioned by Krishna. Even if you worship somebody else, even if you worship a demigod or some material person, there is no guarantee that your desire will be satisfied. Only if Krishna gives permission. For example, I may be ill and I may be a very rich man, so I can afford to buy the best medicine, consult the best doctors, have facilities in the best hospitals, but despite of the best medicine and doctors and hospital, I can still die. That is because ultimately there is a supreme power which gives sanction whether the medicine will work, whether the doctor will be able to cure me. And that supreme power is Krishna. So, Maharaja Nigdra, the son of Priyavrata, he wanted to have a qualified son, so he went in meditation and he prayed to Krishna. Just like sometimes, I remember when I was advising younger devotees in India, sometimes the brahmachari would come to me and say that I am disturbed by sex desire, I want to have a wife, so can you help me find a wife? So my advice would be, don't ask me, ask Krishna. Krishna knows your heart. He knows what is good for you and what is not good for you. You ask Krishna, he will send you the right girl who will help you in your spiritual quest. Whereas if you choose the girl, you don't know what you're going to get. Better ask Krishna. Therefore, Agnidra prayed to Krishna to get a qualified wife, to have a son. And Lord Brahma, in his heart, understood the desire of Agnidra, and he sent one of his most beautiful dancing girls. Her name was Purvachiti. And Purvachiti came to the ashram where Agnidra was performing his austerity. She attracted him. He was also very expert at flattery. To win the heart of a woman, you have to be very good at flattery. And Agnidra, he was expert. So together with Purvachiti, they had many sons, 9 sons. And the eldest son was Nabi. So Nabi married Meru Devi, and he became the emperor of the world. And husband and wife were both so devoted to Krishna that they prayed to the Lord, they prayed to the Brahmanas that we want a son, Krishna. I want you, dear Krishna, dear Vishnu, to appear as our sons. Therefore, they arranged a very big sacrifice. Lord Vishnu appeared in the sacrifice in his four-handed form, and he agreed to become their son. So Lord Vishnu became the son of Nabi and Meru Devi, and his name was yes. How can I forget? So the son that appeared, Lord Vishnu, his name was Rishabdev, the best of the gods, Rishabdev. So Rishabdeva took birth as the son of his devotees who were worshipping him in the mood of Vatsalya Ras, or paternal relationship. There are four main relationships we can develop with God, and the relationship of parent to child is called Vatsalya Ras, in which the devotee serves the Lord. The Lord agrees to accept the service of his devotees by becoming a child. Here in the West and in mainland religion, we generally have a concept of God as the Father. That means he's the order supplier. You go to the Father when you need something. The Father supplies all your needs. But in Vaishnava culture, there is the understanding that God becomes your son. So instead of taking from God, you serve God, you give to God. Whenever Krishna appears in the material world, he always comes with his father and mother, Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj. Yashoda is thinking that if I don't feed Krishna, he's going to get sick, he's going to die. She doesn't understand that her son, Krishna, a little child, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead with unlimited power. She doesn't understand that. She's thinking that he is my child, I have to protect him. Another example is when Lord Chaitanya appeared. His father was Jagannath Mishra. And one time a visiting Brahmana came to the house of Jagannath Mishra, and during the conversations, he understood that Lord Chaitanya was the Supreme Lord. Therefore, he advised Jagannath Mishra that your son is not an ordinary son, he's the Supreme Lord. You have to be very, very respectful and very careful how you deal with him. So Jagannath Mishra replied, he may be whoever he is, but he's my son. It is my duty to educate him and to control him and to teach him. So this is the Yogamaya, or the spiritual potency of God that makes the devotee totally absorbed in giving service to the Lord as his child. So Rishabdev took birth from Nabi and Meru Devi, and Rishabdev became the emperor of the world, and he had 100 sons. When these sons were grown up, he retired from material life and he went to the forest and to travel around the world. But before he retired, he gathered his 100 sons and he gave them very good instructions. He told them, Nayam deodaya vajamdri loke kashtan kaman harate vidbhujamye. My dear sons, the purpose of human life is not to simply satisfy the senses in eating, sleeping, and mating like the dogs and the hogs. Tapodivyam putraka. Putraka, my dear sons, tapodivyam. You have to perform spiritual austerity. Why? Yena, through which sudyat sattvam. You can purify your heart. And when you purify your heart through transcendental practice, then Brahma Sokyam Tuanantam. You will receive pleasure, spiritual pleasure, which you cannot imagine how wonderful it is, and it is never ending, Anantam. So he gave this advice to his children. And the eldest son was Maharaj Bharat, which Prabhupada mentions in this purport. So Bharat Maharaj, he also, after his father retired, he became the emperor of the world, but at a very young age, he was so attached to Krishna blessed by his father, who was Vishnu himself. He was so attached to Krishna that at the age of 24, he gave up his kingdom. Gave up his kingdom, gave up his wife, gave up his family, his treasury. Yo dustyajan dara sutan. Dara means wife, suta means children. Surid, friends. Ridish prishaha. These things are very much cause very much attachment within the heart. But he gave it up. Jaho, you Iva Malavat. Even in his youth, he gave it up just like a man gives up his excrement. He passes it and he leaves. Why did he do this? Uttama shloka lalasaha. Because he became so much attracted to Uttama shloka. Uttama shloka is the name of Krishna that means, shloka means verse, poetry, and Uttama means the highest. Krishna is worshipped by the highest verse. That's why we read Bhagavad Gita. That's why we read Srimad Bhagavatam, because they contain the highest worship, the highest verses glorifying the Lord. And when we do this, these questions, these verses glorifying Krishna, by understanding, by memorizing, by reading these verses, our faith in Krishna increases more and more. Anyhow, Bharat Maharaj retired to the forest. He became almost perfect in meditation, but at the last moment he became somehow attached to a deer. And when he left his body, he was meditating upon the deer, and he took birth as a deer. But because of his exalted practice, he didn't forget his spiritual nature, even though he was in the body of a deer. Therefore, he would always stay near the ashrams of the great sages. And after he gave up the body of a deer, he took birth in a family of a highly exalted Brahmana. And when he took birth as a Brahmana, he remembered his previous lives, and he thought, I don't want to become attached anymore to the material world. So he refused to cooperate with anybody. He refused to speak logically. He refused to learn anything from his father. He was acting like a madman. His brothers, they rejected him. And his father, even though he loved him, he tried his best to teach him. But Jad Bharat, he wouldn't listen. So Jada means dull, like wood, dull. Jad Bharat. So Jad Bharat lived his life like a madman. He didn't do anything according to any system. But within his heart, he understood that this is his opportunity to go back home, back to Godhead. And he didn't want to become distracted. One of the symptoms of spiritual advancement is that one has a desire and an inclination to live alone, to connect with Krishna in the heart, alone, not interested in the course of society. So Jad Bharat, he was considered useless by his brothers, so they put him in the field to clap his hands to keep away the birds from eating the seeds. So he was like a human scarecrow. So some dacoits, worshippers of Kali Devi, they found him and they took him and said, we will offer him to Devi. So they took him and they were going to cut off his head and offer it to the goddess. The goddess understood that this Jad Bharat was an exalted devotee. She became very angry and she killed all the dacoits that had kidnapped Bharat, and Jad Bharat was set free. So he was walking, not minding anybody, and then there was a palanquin coming with a king. The king was being carried on a palanquin. And one of the palanquin carriers had become ill, so they needed a palanquin carrier. So they found this Jad Bharat on the side of the road and said, well, you're a strong young man, come. So they engaged him in carrying the palanquin. So he didn't mind. He carried the palanquin, but he wasn't carrying it very steadily. It was moving up and down. So the king was complaining, said, "What is going on? Why is the palanquin moving up and down? Why is it not going steadily?" And they said, "It's not us, Your Majesty. It's this new person we have engaged. He's not walking properly. He's stopping and moving and going and stopping again." So the king, he became angry and he said, "What is this? What are you doing?" Actually, what was happening was that Jat Bharat was looking on the ground when he was walking and carrying the palanquin, but when he saw an ant, he would move or he would stop. He didn't want to step on the ant. That's another sign of pure devotion, that you don't want to hurt any living entity. Why not? Because you see every living entity connected to Krishna. You don't see the body, you see the living entity within the body. You don't want to disturb that living entity's journey, because all of us are on a journey back home, back to Godhead, whether we like it or not. So Jat Bharat was avoiding the ants, and therefore he was causing a disturbance to the carrying of the palanquin. So the king, his name was Rahugana, he became very angry. And he said to him, "You rascal, what are you doing? You're supposed to carry the palanquin evenly, but you're moving here and there. So then, give me an answer." So Jat Bharat, he began to explain the philosophy of life to the king. He said, "My dear king," says, "you are sitting on a palanquin, you think you're a very big man, and I'm carrying your palanquin, I'm a lowly worker, but actually there is no difference between me and you. By your karma, you have got the body of a king, and by my karma, I've got my own body." So in this way they began to discuss, and the king understood that this palanquin carrier was no normal person. He was a great sage, devotee, so he begged forgiveness, and then a wonderful discussion takes place. So this took place at the beginning of this kalpa. As I said, there is 4 yugas totaling 4,300,000 years. 1,000 of these yugas, or 4 billion years, is one day of Brahma, and that is called a kalpa. So at the beginning of this kalpa, this story is given in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Srimad Bhagavatam and the Vedas in general give us knowledge about, give us information and knowledge which we cannot achieve by our own effort. It is descending knowledge. Sometimes people question that the Vedas are not in logical order, they're not in historical order. But normally they are not, and sometimes they are. This particular section, 5th canto Srimad Bhagavatam, is actually in historical order because it begins at the beginning of this kalpa, at the first Manu, Swayambhuva Manu. But normally speaking, history keeps repeating itself. The story of material life is the story of the soul and the journey of the soul. The purpose of material life is to give the soul an opportunity to regain his spiritual knowledge. That is the most important subject matter. This is the real Shrutyavadini Rajendra, my dear king, Sukadeva Goswami said, hearing is so important. Nrinam Shanti Saharsa. There is thousands of subject matters, but hearing about Krishna is the most important subject matter. And apashyatam atmatatvam griyeshu griyamedinam. That those who are interested in the body and the byproducts of the body, they cannot see apashyatan atmatat. They cannot see the atma tattva, the truth of the soul. So the Vedas deal with awakening our understanding of a spiritual nature and our relationship with God. So any subject matter which helps the living entity to come to this understanding, that is considered Veda. And the Vedas are a collection of stories simply designed to awaken our original spiritual nature. Thank you very much. So we have a few comments from Mandi Priyo from England, Hare Krishna Mata, and Krishna Premavati Devidasi. Good evening, my pranams to you and to all the attendants. Krishna Premavati just came back from India. I think she was there for many, many months. And Atmavidya, good evening, Hare Krishna. Vrishnivamsa, Dandavats. Mandipriya, a great class as always. Thank you, dear Prabhu. I don't know about great. I'm just simply... I'm actually reading, in the middle of reading the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Generally what I do, I read the Srimad Bhagavatam, and then when I get to the end, I start at the beginning again. So I'm actually reading about this particular subject matter. This is one of the great pleasures of spiritual life. Sometimes I find that I'm reading something in the Bhagavatam, and then the same thing comes in the Bhagavad Gita, or it comes in a lecture that I'm listening, Prabhupada's lectures. So in this way, my faith that Krishna is guiding me increases more and more. Good. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on Friday. Hare Krishna.